curiosity. In high school, I sometimes longed for such indifference, because in the late 1930s, Mulholland Drive had become the foremost trysting, parking, and necking spot in Los Angeles. It turns out that William Mulholland was, in fact, the highest-paid public official in California a century or so ago, but by today's standards that doesn't mean much. That grand annual salary wouldn't cover the mortgage payment on most of the homes along the road bearing his name today. In 1974, Robert Towne wrote the script for Chinatown, an acclaimed film that derives substance from some of the things Mulholland was involved with, but he is called Hollis Mulwray in the film. His fictional character is minor and killed early on, and the filmmakers had to fudge most of the actual facts, including the time frame, for fear audiences would get lost in the forests of history. In the latter half of the 20th century, a number of factually based works were written regarding the fierce water politics in the West, including Mark Reisner's notable Cadillac Desert, The American West and Its Disappearing Water, 1993. Mulholland and the Los Angeles Aqueduct get their fair share of mention there and in other books, including William Carl's exhaustive Water and Power, The Conflict Over Los Angeles's Water Supply in the Owens Valley, 1983, and Abraham Hoffman's Vision or Villainy, Origins of the Owens Valley Los Angeles Water Controversy, 1981, which make the aqueduct project their primary focus. However, as some, including Catherine Mulholland, have lamented, many of the water issue books are dominated by political concerns and a seemingly unavoidable tendency to side with one group or another of the good guys du jour. I estimate that of the voluminous literature which exists concerning the history of Owens Valley and water in Southern California, Ms. Mulholland once stated, that about 50% is reliable, while the remainder, based largely on secondary and often dubious sources, could be consigned to the fiction department. Understandable, perhaps, for as the hard-bitten newspaper editor likes to observe, only trouble is interesting, and there is nothing like scandal to engage the attentions of an audience. Coupled with the temptation to judge the actions of those who lived a century ago through the lens of present-day political correctness, history often becomes subject to revision. It all became a bit too much for Ms. Mulholland, however, when she picked up an issue of the New York Times in 1991 to read an article citing Chinatown as a historical primer for understanding the practice of municipal predation upon water resources to which, the Times writer maintained, the city had no right. Galled that a crime melodrama, however artful, had come to be regarded by the uninformed as a kind of documentary work on the history of Los Angeles, and dissatisfied by the paeans to Mulholland penned earlier in the century, she was moved to write William Mulholland and the Rise of Los Angeles, 2000, a biography of her grandfather that is a meticulous birth-to-death record of a remarkable life. While that publication was both well-received and thorough, in its original form it was nearly twice as lengthy, and in the editing process, certain more personal gems were unfortunately lost. In that first manuscript, Ms. Mulholland traces at some length her own history and growing fascination with her subject, including recollections of the occasional encounters with those who simply had a friendly curiosity about my relationship to the engineer, and who sometimes spoke of their admiration for your grandfather, who did so much for Los Angeles. But in time, the burden of her family's name became increasingly apparent. As I grew older, certain darker brushes not only disturbed, they paralyzed me, as I had no sure defenses against them. They could come unexpectedly, as on a night in the 1940s, when I sat listening to Art Tatum's virtuoso keyboard improvisations at the streets of Paris in Hollywood. During intermission, I fell into talk with the man next to me at the piano bar. Although in his cups, he was knowledgeable about the music, and so when in the course of a genial exchange he asked me my name, I was not prepared for his reaction. "You're not related to that son of a bitch, are you?" I tried to toss it off. Which son of a bitch did you have in mind? But I already knew what was coming, and it did.